Yeah, so how do you think now the religion is going to evolve? I know we're slightly off subject, but this is part of this conversation too. How religion are going to be perceived now, because they do make us feel guilty.
Right. I think that what's going to happen with the Course in Miracles is that it's going to become for Christianity pretty much what the Kabbalah has become for Judaism. There'll be a mystical wing, which there already is a mystical wing of the Christian religion, but it's very diverse. And what will happen is you'll see more and more Christians turning to something like A Course in Miracles because it satisfies that personal spiritual
Mm-hmm.
need that people have to join with their source, which is God or the Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call it. And it's really more for mystics. I think the traditional religion will always be there for people who are more conservative, who are, a little leery about doing anything that the Bible doesn't say. But at the same time, I think that the course is going to be for the mystics. It's going to be for the people who are more open-minded. And even though I don't think that Christianity will ever officially embrace A Course in Miracles, I think that more and more Christians will turn to it as an alternative form of spirituality, just like a lot of Jewish people turn to the Kabbalah as a mystical form of spirituality.
Can you remind us just quickly the origins of the Course in Miracles and who wrote it and when?
Sure. The Course was originally published in 1976 by the Foundation for Inner Peace in America. It's about 1,300 pages long because it has really three books in one. It's, three books. The person who scribed the course was named Dr. Helen Schuckman. She's from New York City. She heard the voice of Jesus over a period of 7 years. And then she wrote it down in her shorthand notebook, and she would dictate what the voice, as she called it, said to her, and then that was typed out by her colleague, Dr. Bill Thedford. They were both research psychologists at the Columbia School of Physicians and Surgeons in New York City. They were very prestigious academics, so they did not put their name on this thing because it was so radical and so different than what they had been teaching all their lives. But they did learn from it, and then they founded this organization called the Foundation for Inner Peace. And there were 5 of them altogether, including Dr. Ken Wapnick, who is today probably, I think, the best Course in Miracles teacher in the world. And they published the course, and it's been going for about 35 years. And it is mostly spread by word of mouth. They don't have a big advertising thing. And that's also how my books have been spread the last 7 years. They're mostly by word of mouth. People share it with their friends and their relatives. The Disappearance of the Universe has study groups all over the world. And it's a personal thing. It's not some big corporate kind of a thing. It's just a word of mouth thing that's spreading all over the world. And the course is very radical. It gives you the kind of Jesus that you would find perhaps in the Gospel of Thomas, rather than in the traditional Gospels, which have turned him into a religious figure where you have to believe in the Apostles' Creed. You have to believe that Jesus is God's only son. That's not what he says in the Course in Miracles. He says, collectively, we are all God's one child. And, it's kind of like he's making a personal teaching with you and explaining to you how he became enlightened and how you can be like him. How you can be enlightened like him by simply doing the same things that he did. And there's a workbook with meditations and all kinds of instructions that help condition your mind to be like him if you choose to be. And it's not for everybody, but if it's for you, then you know it. The course has sold millions of copies, and it's spread all over the world. And yet there are a lot of people who don't know about it because you don't have Helen Schuckman going on TV because she passed away in 1981. So it's kind of like it's a personal thing. And what I try to do,
Marianne Williamson shares a lot about it.
Yeah, Marianne is probably the most well-known teacher of the Course in Miracles, and she's probably introduced more people to the Course than anybody in history. I'm kind of like catching up with her now. I like to think that in the last 7 years especially, I know that many, many people have been introduced to the Course through the disappearance of the universe. And I think it does a very good job of explaining the Course, once again, not because of me, but because of my teachers. And I think that, every 10 or 20 years, you have a book like that come out that, really introduces a lot of people to the Course. And that's just one way that the Holy Spirit kind of like shares the word with people and introduces people to what they're ready for.
So one question that I always have to people that kind of touch this divinity or are so close from those teachings of ascended masters or top teachers, how do you keep it real? How do you not? Is there some point where you feel like anything is possible and you kind of go overboard and then you learn, then you get back on track with authenticity? I mean, how do you keep it real in all this?
Well, one of the great things about this form of spirituality is that it's very practical. You can live your life and you can be normal. That's what I tell people. Don't forget how to be normal. Live a normal life. I have met some of the most famous spiritual teachers in the world in the last few years, and a lot of them, they have forgotten how to carry on a normal conversation. When I moved from Maine to California, I would ask some of these teachers, hey, what's it like to be in California? And they'll give you like a speech, and they'll tell you how they're going to save California and all this stuff. And what I meant was, well, what are the beaches like? What's it like to live there? What's it like to experience it? And that's what I tell people. Remember to have a normal life. You can do this because this is done at the level of the mind. You can still have your life. So it's very practical. And one of the things that keeps it real is your experience, because your experience is the most real thing that you have. It's not the physical things that you have in your life that are the most real things to you. The most real things to you are things like love, things that you experience, the love that you have for other people, the experiences that you have when you travel somewhere and you see these beautiful things. I was just in Greece last week admiring all of this beauty. And when I see that, I think of it nowadays as being kind of like a projection of the beauty that exists in my mind, which is a reflection of God. It's not really God, but it's a reflection of the beauty of God that is in my mind. So I think that this is a perfect balance between living a normal life, keeping it real, and at the same time being able to look at things in such a way that your experience starts to shift to that beautiful experience that is less painful and more joyous, which is an experience of being spirit. So it really is the kind of thing where you can have your life and at the same time awaken from it.
Yeah. So is that what you're trying to talk about also in your movie, the documentary Leap?
Yeah. That's one of the things that I've done. I've been in a couple of movies. There'll be another one coming out soon that is specifically about A Course in Miracles. And I think that the whole idea behind the Course, and you have to understand that in that movie, Leap, most of the teachers were talking about diverse teachings. I was probably the only one who was talking about A Course in Miracles, but it doesn't matter because I believe that all of the messages that we get in terms of spirituality are valid. I think that the Holy Spirit speaks to people in many different ways, and that we are all being led one step at a time along the path. So even though you see a lot of different teachers saying a lot of different things, they're all important because they all lead to the same place in the end. And the Holy Spirit will show up for people in the world in whatever way is best for them. For some people, the Holy Spirit could show up as an angel because that's what they can accept and understand without fear. For some people, the Holy Spirit could show up in the dream because, the Course refines that idea of this world being an illusion to the idea of it being a dream that we will awaken from. And once again, that awakening is enlightenment. And, the Holy Spirit for some people could show up in the dream as the Virgin Mary because, that's something that they can accept without fear, and that would be acceptable to them.
Yeah. That's why I had a question in 92 when you saw those ascended masters right next to you after meditating. I mean, you must have been pretty open and ready to see this, because that they appear as real and you can touch them and feel their flesh and have a real conversation. This is very surreal for a lot of people, and a lot of people never have that kind of experience, I guess. So you were there and open.
Yes. What I've learned about them since then is that even though they appeared to me and still appear to me as bodies, Art and Purse of the two ascended masters showed up as people on my living room couch. Now I know that what that really was the Holy Spirit, and still is the Holy Spirit showing up for me in a way that I can accept and understand. And I think the reason that the Holy Spirit decided to appear as bodies, in this case, was because they wanted the conversations that we had in the disappearance of the universe to be human. They wanted them to be a different style of conversation. A lot of the spiritual teachings that we have nowadays, they're channeled and they seem to come from up above somewhere, and they're a little bit removed from our everyday experience. However, because Art and Purse appeared to me as bodies, it made for a different style of conversation. They were like right in my face. It's like I couldn't get away from what they were saying. They were very blunt. And when I get a little bit nervous, which I was, I tend to become kind of like a smartass. I kind of like give these wise comments and tell some, kind of like jokes about things that maybe aren't very relevant to the conversation. But what it did was it made for the style of conversation that a lot of people could relate to, because that's the way that people talk in their real lives. That's the way that people talk in their everyday lives. So we have a conversation that is talking about very advanced metaphysical and spiritual ideas, but they're put in such a way that everyday people, including myself, can understand them. I'm not a genius. I never went to college. I don't have any credentials or degrees or anything like that. And yet, the Disappearance of the Universe educates people about A Course in Miracles in a way that's never been done before. There have never been so many people who could actually understand the Course as there is today. Yeah. And that's specifically because of that book. And I think that, it's given the way that it is so that it sinks right into people and they can accept it as everyday conversation. It makes everything so much more understandable, where A Course in Miracles is very biblical and scholarly. It's a holographic presentation, which is very difficult to understand because it starts off with its most advanced ideas, which you can't possibly understand except through repetition. The Disappearance of the Universe, on the other hand, rather than being a holographic presentation, is a linear presentation, which means that the whole thing is spelled out in order so that you can really see where it's going. You can really see and understand exactly what the Course is talking about, so that by the time you get to the end of the book, then you can go back, you can read A Course in Miracles, and it will actually make sense to you. Even though the Course is starting out with its most advanced ideas, you will understand them because it's already been explained to you by the Disappearance of the Universe.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Gary. This conversation was longer than I would have imagined, but I know there's a lot to talk about and even more to talk about. But would you have a last little word or message that you would like to share with us today to end this conversation?
Well, sure. First of all, I know that this broadcast will go all over the world, so I want to tell people that when I come to your country, I hope that you'll come and see me, because I think that the message of my teachers, the message of A Course in Miracles is very important, and it's helping to lead to that general spiritual awakening that I was talking about earlier. And I just hope to meet you, because there's this joining going on, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. And I'm just honored to be able to participate in it. And I'd like to thank you for this interview. It's been very helpful, and I hope we'll do it again sometime.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. And let us know when you're in Chicago. Now I'm based in Chicago, so please, next time you're in town, we'll do a one-on-one in person.
Hey, that would be great. I'll do that.
Thank you. I send you much love. Thank you.
You too. Out by her colleague, Dr. Bill Thedford. They were both research psychologists at the Columbia School of Physicians and Surgeons in New York City. They were very prestigious academics, so they did not put their name on this thing because it was so radical and so different than what they had been teaching all their lives. But they did learn from it, and then they founded this organization called the Foundation for Inner Peace. And there were 5 of them all together. At the time, I think that the course is going to be for the mystics. It's going to be for the people who are more open-minded. And even though I don't think that Christianity will ever officially embrace A Course in Miracles, I think that more and more Christians will turn to it as an alternative form of spirituality, just like a lot of Jewish people turn to the Kabbalah as a mystical form of spirituality.
Can you remind us just quickly the origins of the Course in Miracles and who wrote it and when?
Sure. The Course was originally published in 1976 by the Foundation for Inner Peace in America. It's about 1,300 pages long because it has really 3 books in one. It's 3 books. The person who scribed the Course was named Dr. Helen Schuckman. She's from New York City. She heard the voice of Jesus over a period of 7 years. And then she wrote it down in her shorthand notebook, and she would dictate what the voice, as she called it, said to her. And then that was typed in, but it's very diverse. And what will happen is you'll see more and more Christians turning to something like A Course in Miracles because it satisfies that personal spiritual need that people have to join with their source, which is God or the Holy Spirit or whatever you want to call it. And it's really more for mystics. I think the traditional religion will always be there for people who are more conservative, who are, a little leery about doing anything that the Bible doesn't say. But at the same
So how do you think now the religion is going to evolve? I know we're slightly off subject, but this is part of this conversation too. How religion are going to be perceived now, because they do make us feel guilty.
Right. I think that what's going to happen with the Course in Miracles is that it's going to become for Christianity pretty much what the Kabbalah has become for Judaism. There'll be a mystical wing, which there already is a mystical wing of the Christian